The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of the trading post, and Katherine Lambert stepped down onto the dusty street of Opal, Wyoming, with her wrists screaming in pain beneath the long sleeves of her traveling dress. She had worn the heaviest fabric she owned, despite the June heat of 1876, knowing that questions would come the moment anyone saw the angry red marks circling both wrists like grotesque bracelets. The rope burns were still raw, weeping in places, and every movement sent sharp reminders of the 3 days she had spent tied to a chair in a Kansas City boarding house while men decided her fate. The advertisement had seemed like salvation 4 months ago. Respectable rancher seeks wife for partnership in Wyoming territory. Must be of good character and willing to work. She had written back immediately, desperate to escape her situation, and within weeks, everything had been arranged. But the man who was supposed to meet her in Kansas City was not the rancher at all. He was something much worse, and by the time Katherine understood what was happening, she was already trapped. She had gotten away. That was all that mattered now. She had gotten away, and she had kept moving west because going back to Missouri meant going back to her stepbrother, and that was not an option she would ever consider again. The real rancher, Warren Fletcher, probably thought she had simply failed to appear, that she was another woman who had changed her mind about frontier life. He had no way of knowing what had happened, and Katherine had no way of explaining without revealing how foolish she had been, how easily she had been deceived. The trading post was smaller than she had imagined, but Opal itself was barely more than a handful of buildings scattered across the high plains. Mountains rose in the distance, still crowned with snow even in summer, and the wind carried the scent of sage and something wild she could not name. She had enough money for perhaps a week if she was careful, and then she would need to find work. The thought terrified her, but not as much as the alternative. "Help you, miss." The clerk inside the trading post was an older man with kind eyes and a beard that reached his chest. He looked at her with curiosity but no suspicion, and Katherine felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "I need a room if there is one available, just for a few nights while I make arrangements." Her voice sounded steadier than she felt, and she was grateful for that small mercy. "We do not have rooms here, but Mrs. Patterson runs a boarding house 2 buildings down. She is a good woman, fair prices." He paused, studying her more closely. "You come in on the stage. We do not get many visitors this time of year." "I am looking for work," Katherine said, which was true enough. "I heard there might be opportunities here." The clerk scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Well, now, that depends on what kind of work you are looking for. If you can cook or clean, Mrs. Patterson might have something. If you can teach, the town has been trying to get a school teacher for near about a year. And if you know anything about horses or cattle, well, there is always work on the ranches, though that is hard labor for a woman." Katherine nodded, thanking him, and made her way back onto the street. The boarding house was easy to find. A 2-story structure with a painted sign that had been freshened recently. Mrs. Patterson was indeed a good woman, round and cheerful and utterly incurious about why a young woman would arrive alone with only one small bag. She showed Katherine to a small room on the 2nd floor, accepted payment for 3 nights, and promised supper would be ready in an hour. Once alone, Katherine finally allowed herself to examine her wrists properly. The sleeves had stuck to the wounds in places, and pulling them free brought tears to her eyes. The rope burns were worse than she had thought, deep and angry, and she could see the beginnings of infection in one spot. She needed medicine, bandages, something to clean them properly. But that would mean showing them to someone, and showing them meant questions. She compromised by washing them as best she could with the water in the basin, biting her lip against the pain, and then pulling her sleeves back down to hide the damage. At supper, she sat with the other boarders and kept her hands in her lap as much as possible. There were two minors, an older woman who seemed to be a permanent resident, and a cowboy who barely looked up from his plate the entire meal. No one asked her story, and she volunteered nothing. That night, Katherine lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier town. Dogs barked in the distance. Someone was playing a fiddle somewhere. The wind rattled the windows in their frames. Her wrists throbbed with a deep, sickening ache, and she knew she could not ignore them much longer. But tomorrow she would figure something out. Morning came too early and too bright. Katherine forced herself out of bed and dressed carefully, choosing a blouse with tight cuffs that would at least hide the worst of the damage. Breakfast was a quiet affair, and afterward, she ventured into town to inquire about work. The trading post clerk had been right about Mrs. Patterson needing help, but when Katherine asked, the older woman shook her head. "I would love to have the assistance, dear, but I can only pay room and board, no wages. If that suits you, we could work something out, but if you need actual money, I am afraid I cannot help." Katherine thanked her and moved on. The town was small enough that she covered every possibility by midday. There was no school yet, so no teaching position. The saloon owner looked her over with eyes that made her skin crawl and offered work she would never accept. The seamstress already had an assistant. The general store was family-run and needed no one else. By afternoon, Katherine was beginning to panic. Her wrists were worse, hot to the touch and painful even when she was not moving. She could feel fever starting to build in her blood, that telltale heat that meant infection was spreading. She needed help, but she had no money for a doctor even if Opal had one, which it did not according to Mrs. Patterson. She was sitting on the steps of the boarding house, trying to think through her limited options, when a wagon pulled up in front of the trading post. The cowboy from supper the night before climbed down, moving with the easy grace of someone who spent most of his life on horseback. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of sand. He wore a battered hat pulled low, and his clothes were work-worn but clean. Katherine watched him disappear into the trading post, then emerge a few minutes later with several parcels. He loaded them into the wagon with efficient movements, then paused, his attention caught by something. He turned, and his gaze landed directly on Katherine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he crossed the street, his boots stirring up small clouds of dust with each step, and stopped at the base of the stairs. "Afternoon, miss." His voice was low and rough, like he did not use it often. "Are you feeling all right? You look pale." Katherine wanted to say she was fine, but the world chose that moment to swim dangerously in her vision. She gripped the railing to steady herself, and pain shot up both arms. She must have made some sound because suddenly the cowboy was moving, taking the steps 2 at a time. Easy now. His hands were gentle on her shoulders, steadying her. "When did you last eat?" "Breakfast. I am fine, really. Just the heat." He studied her face for a long moment, and Katherine had the uncomfortable sensation of being seen far too clearly. "You are burning up with fever." "Come on, let me help you inside." "I am fine," Katherine insisted, but when she tried to stand, her legs betrayed her. The cowboy caught her easily, one arm supporting her weight. Stubborn as well as sick. That is a dangerous combination out here. There was no judgment in his tone, just matter-of-fact observation. He guided her through the door and called for Mrs. Patterson. The landlady came bustling out, took one look at Katherine, and began issuing orders. Between them, they got Katherine back to her room. She was vaguely aware of being placed on the bed, of voices discussing her condition, and then the cowboy was speaking directly to her. "Miss, I need you to listen to me. You have fever, which means infection somewhere. I know a bit about doctoring, enough to help if you will let me. But I need to examine you to find the source. Do you understand? Katherine nodded, too sick now to protest. Mrs. Patterson was there too, which made it more acceptable, more proper. She felt hands checking her forehead, her throat, and then the cowboy was carefully rolling up her sleeves. She heard his sharp intake of breath and wanted to explain, but the words would not come. His fingers were impossibly gentle as he examined her wrists, and when he spoke again, his voice was tight with controlled anger. Mrs. Patterson, I need clean water, the hottest you can manage. Soap, clean cloths, and my saddlebag from the wagon. There is a leather pouch inside with medical supplies. The landlady hurried away, and Katherine forced her eyes open. The cowboy was still examining her wrists, his face carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his jaw. I am not going to ask how this happened, he said quietly. But I am going to fix it, and you are going to let me because if we do not treat this infection soon, you could lose your hands, maybe more. Do you understand? Yes. It came out as barely a whisper. Good. My name is Warren Fletcher. I have a ranch about 5 miles from here. I have tended everything from horses to cattle to cowboys stupid enough to tangle with barbed wire. You are in capable hands, I promise. Warren Fletcher. The name sent a shock through Katherine's fever-fogged mind. This was the man she was supposed to marry, the rancher who had placed the advertisement. He did not know who she was, had no reason to connect the sick woman in the boarding house with the mail-order bride who had never arrived, Mrs. Patterson returned with supplies, and Warren set to work with focused efficiency. First, he cleaned the wounds, which hurt worse than anything Katherine had experienced in her life. She bit down on a rolled cloth Mrs. Patterson provided and tried not to scream. He worked in silence, his hands steady, removing the infected tissue and cleaning deep into the rope burns. This is going to sting, he warned before applying some kind of salve that felt like liquid fire. Katherine could not help the tears that leaked from the corners of her eyes, but she did not cry out. He bandaged her wrists with clean white cloth, wrapping them carefully. The infection is bad, but I think we caught it in time. You are going to need to keep these clean and dry. I will leave the salve with Mrs. Patterson, and the bandages need changing twice a day. You will need rest, lots of water, and food when you can manage it. I cannot pay you, Katherine managed to say. Warren's expression softened slightly. I am not asking you to. Out here we help each other. That is how we survive. He stood, gathering his supplies. I will check on you tomorrow, make sure the fever is breaking. He was at the door when Katherine's voice stopped him. Thank you. He glanced back, and for a moment, something passed between them, some recognition of pain understood if not shared. Get some rest, miss. Over the next 3 days, Warren came by twice a day to change Katherine's bandages. He never asked about the rope burns, never pressed for her story. He simply tended the wounds with the same careful attention he probably gave his animals, efficient and gentle in equal measure. Slowly, the infection receded. The angry red faded to pink, and the fever broke on the 2nd day. Mrs. Patterson, bless her, seemed to understand that Katherine needed space and time. She brought meals on trays and sat with her sometimes, talking about Opal and its residents, asking nothing in return. It was during one of these conversations that Katherine learned more about Warren Fletcher. He is a good man, Mrs. Patterson said, working on her knitting while Katherine picked at her lunch. Came out here 6 years ago with nothing but a horse and determination. Built that ranch from the ground up. Does not talk much, keeps to himself mostly, but he is the first one to help when someone needs it. Is he married? The question came out before Katherine could stop it. No, dear. There was some talk a few months back about him sending for a mail-order bride, but she never showed up. Probably got cold feet about frontier life. Most Eastern women do when they really think about what it means. She glanced at Katherine with shrewd eyes. Where did you say you were from? Missouri. Also true, if incomplete. Long way to come. What brought you all the way out to Wyoming? Katherine chose her words carefully. I needed a fresh start. Sometimes the only way to have a future is to leave the past behind. Mrs. Patterson nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. Well, you have come to the right place for that. Out here, people care more about what you do than what you have done. Everyone has a past, and most of us prefer to leave it there. On the fourth day, Katherine's bandages needed changing, but Warren did not come in the morning as expected. Mrs. Patterson looked worried as she prepared fresh supplies. I am sure he just got held up with ranch work, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. I can do it if you are comfortable with that. Katherine agreed, though she missed Warren's practiced efficiency. Mrs. Patterson was gentle but less sure, and the process took longer. Afterward, Katherine sat by the window, watching the street below. She told herself she was not looking for Warren, but when the sun began to set and he still had not appeared, she could not deny the worry that had taken root in her chest. He finally arrived just before supper, looking exhausted and covered in dust. He came straight up to Katherine's room, Mrs. Patterson following with fresh water. Sorry I am late, he said, already rolling up his sleeves. Had a situation with wolves near the herd. Lost 2 calves before we could drive them off. Katherine watched him work, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the weariness in every movement. When did you last sleep? Couple days ago, I think. It has been busy. He examined her wrists carefully, and she saw approval in his expression. These are healing well. Another week and you will barely be able to tell. That is not true, but I appreciate the kindness. Katherine hesitated, then continued, You should rest. You look ready to fall over. I will, once I get back to the ranch. He finished wrapping her right wrist and started on the left. His hands were steady despite his obvious fatigue, and Katherine felt a surge of admiration for this quiet, capable man. Mrs. Patterson says you built your ranch yourself. She was not sure why she said it, just knew that she wanted to keep him talking, to keep him here a little longer. More or less, had some help, but yes, most of it was just me and stubbornness. He tied off the bandage and sat back. Why do you ask? I am trying to understand this place, this life. It is all very different from what I knew. Warren studied her for a moment, and Katherine had again that sensation of being truly seen. Different is not always bad. Takes some getting used to, but there is good here if you are willing to look for it. You ever regret coming west? No. The answer was immediate and certain. Best decision I ever made. Whatever I left behind, it was worth leaving. He stood, gathering the soiled bandages. You should think about what you are going to do once you are healed. Opal is not a bad place, but opportunities for work are limited, especially for women. Katherine nodded, the worry she had been pushing aside rushing back. I know, I have been thinking about it. Can you ride a horse? The question surprised her. Yes, actually, I grew up around horses. Something shifted in Warren's expression, interest replacing fatigue. Can you cook for more than just yourself? I can cook for a dozen people without breaking a sweat. Can you handle ranch work? Mending, basic repairs, managing supplies. Katherine's heart began to beat faster. I am a quick learner and I am not afraid of hard work. Warren was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing something in his mind. Finally, he spoke. I need help at the ranch. I have 3 hands who work the cattle, but I need someone to manage the house, handle the cooking, take care of the day-to-day things I do not have time for. The pay would not be much at first, but it would include room and board in the main house. Separate quarters, all proper, if you are interested. Katherine stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You are offering me a job. I am offering you an opportunity. What you make of it is up to you. He met her gaze squarely. I will be honest with you. It is hard work, long hours, and the ranch is isolated. But it is honest work, and you would be safe there. I can promise you that much. Safe. The word resonated through Katherine like a bell. When was the last time she had felt truly safe? Why would you trust me? You do not know anything about me. I know you are running from something. I know someone hurt you badly enough to leave those marks on your wrists. And I know you came all the way to Wyoming alone, which means you are either very brave or very desperate, probably both. He paused. I also know you have not lied to me once since I met you. You have not told me everything, but what you have said has been true. That counts for something. Katherine felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. When would I start? Give it another few days for those wrists to heal a bit more. Come Sunday, if you are still interested, I will send a wagon to pick you up. I am interested, Katherine said quickly. And thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. Warren's expression softened into something that was almost a smile. I think I might have some idea. Get some rest, Katherine. You have a lot of work ahead of you. It was the first time he had used her name, and the sound of it in his rough voice sent unexpected warmth through her chest. She watched him leave, then sat staring at her bandaged wrists, hardly able to process what had just happened. Warren Fletcher, the man she had been supposed to marry, had just offered her work on the ranch that would have been her home anyway. The irony was not lost on her, but neither was the kindness. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Mrs. Patterson helped Katherine acquire more appropriate clothing for ranch work, practical skirts and sturdy boots. The older woman asked no questions about the sudden employment, just seemed pleased that Katherine had found a place. Warren Fletcher is a good man, she repeated on Saturday evening as she helped Katherine pack her few belongings. He will treat you right. You do not need to worry about that. I know, Katherine said, and realized she meant it. In the short time she had known Warren, he had proven himself to be exactly what Mrs. Patterson claimed, steady and honorable and kind. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright, and Katherine was ready when the wagon arrived. But it was not Warren driving. Instead, a younger man, probably no more than 25, grinned down at her from the seat. "Morning, miss. I am Charlie, one of Mr. Fletcher's hands. He sent me to fetch you since he is dealing with a mare that decided to foal 2 weeks early." Katherine climbed up onto the wagon, settling her bag beside her. "Is the mare all right? She will be once the boss gets done with her. He is good with animals, real patient." Charlie flicked the reins and the horses moved forward. "We have all been curious about you." Not often the boss hires someone new, especially not for the house. "I hope I can live up to expectations." "Oh, I would not worry about that. If Mr. Fletcher hired you, it is because he thinks you can do the job. He does not make decisions lightly." The ride to the ranch took about an hour across rolling plains that seemed to stretch forever in every direction. Mountains loomed to the west, still snow-capped even in June, and the grass was thick and green from recent rains. Katherine saw cattle in the distance, more than she had expected, and several horses grazing in a fenced pasture. The ranch itself was larger than she had imagined. The main house was a solid 2-story structure built from logs and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. There were several outbuildings, a large barn, and what looked like a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. Everything was well maintained, speaking to years of careful attention. Warren emerged from the barn as the wagon pulled up, wiping his hands on a cloth. He looked tired but satisfied. "Mare and foal are both doing fine," he said to Charlie, then turned to Katherine. "Welcome to the Fletcher Ranch. Let me show you around." He helped her down from the wagon, his hands firm on her waist, and Katherine was acutely aware of his nearness, the strength in his touch. She stepped back quickly, reminding herself that this was her employer, nothing more. Warren showed her through the main house, pointing out the kitchen, the dining area, the sitting room, and then upstairs to her room. It was simple but comfortable, with a real bed, a wardrobe, and a window that looked out over the plains. "You will take your meals with us," Warren explained. "The hands eat in the main house too. It is just easier that way. I will expect breakfast before sunrise, lunch at noon, and supper whenever we get done with the day's work. You will have Sundays off unless something comes up. What about supplies? We make a trip to town every 2 weeks for anything we cannot produce ourselves. I will take you through the pantry and root cellar so you know what we have." He paused. "The work will be hard, Katherine. I want to make sure you understand that." "I understand," she assured him. "I am not afraid of hard work." "Good. Then let me introduce you to the rest of the crew." The 3 ranch hands were waiting in the yard, clearly curious about the new arrival. Charlie she had already met. The other 2 were older, seasoned cowboys with weather-beaten faces and cautious eyes. "This is Tom and Jake," Warren said. "They have been with me since the beginning. Boys, this is Miss Katherine Lambert. She will be managing the house from now on." Tom nodded respectfully. "Pleased to meet you, miss." Jake just tipped his hat, studying her with an expression Katherine could not quite read. She had the feeling she was being evaluated, weighed and measured against some invisible standard. "Nice to meet all of you," Katherine said. "I hope we will work well together." "I am sure we will," Charlie said with his easy grin. "Anything has to be better than the boss's cooking." Warren did not rise to the bait. "All right, enough standing around. We have work to do. Katherine, take today to settle in and familiarize yourself with the house. Tomorrow we start for real." The men dispersed, heading back to their various tasks, and Warren walked Katherine back to the house. At the door he paused. "I meant what I said. You are safe here. If anyone gives you trouble, anyone at all, you tell me immediately." "Understood." Katherine met his steady gaze and nodded. "Understood. Thank you, Warren." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead just nodded and headed back toward the barn. Katherine watched him go, then turned to explore her new home. The house was cleaner than she expected for a bachelor establishment, but there were signs of neglect that spoke to Warren's busy schedule. Dust gathered in corners, windows needed washing, and the kitchen could use a thorough scrubbing. Katherine rolled up her sleeves, mindful of her healing wrists, and set to work. By evening, the kitchen gleamed, and she had assembled ingredients for a proper supper. The men came in as the sun was setting, tired and hungry. Katherine had the table set and food ready, and the looks of surprise on their faces would have been comical under other circumstances. "You did all this today?" Charlie asked, staring at the platters of fried chicken, potatoes, beans, and fresh biscuits. "It is just supper," Katherine said, suddenly nervous. "I hope it is all right." Warren took his seat at the head of the table, and the others followed. For a moment, there was just the sound of serving spoons and plates being filled. Then Tom took his first bite and actually closed his eyes. "Miss Lambert, if you can cook like this every day, you can stay as long as you want," he said with absolute sincerity. The others murmured agreement through mouthfuls of food, and Katherine felt some of her anxiety ease. She took her own seat and ate quietly while the men discussed the day's work. Warren said little, but she noticed him watching her occasionally, his expression thoughtful. After supper, the hands excused themselves to the bunkhouse, and Katherine began clearing the table. Warren moved to help, but she waved him off. "You have done enough today. Go rest." "You worked just as hard as I did." "Yes, but this is my job. Let me do it." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but do not stay up too late. Tomorrow starts early." Katherine washed dishes in the warm kitchen, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Through the window, she could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, more stars than she had ever seen in her life. This place was so different from everything she had known, wild and open and somehow more honest. She thought about Warren, about the gentleness in his hands when he bandaged her wrists, the careful way he had offered her this opportunity without pressing for explanations. She thought about the advertisement that had brought her west, about the woman she was supposed to be and the woman she actually was. Eventually, she would have to tell him the truth. He deserved to know that she had been his intended bride, that she had been the one who failed to show up. But not yet. First, she needed to prove herself, to show him that she could be valuable to this ranch. Then, maybe, she could find the courage to reveal who she really was. The days fell into a rhythm that was both exhausting and strangely satisfying. Katherine woke before dawn to start breakfast, fed the hungry crew, and then spent the day maintaining the house, managing supplies and preparing the next meal. Her wrists healed steadily, the bandages growing smaller until Warren finally declared them unnecessary. "You will have scars," he said as he examined them one last time, his fingers gentle on her skin. "But the infection is completely gone. You were lucky." Katherine looked at the pink marks circling her wrists and felt a strange sense of ownership. "They are a reminder. Sometimes we need those." Warren met her eyes, understanding passing between them. "Sometimes we do." The ranch kept them all busy. Warren and his hands were working to expand the herd, which meant long days moving cattle, mending fences, and dealing with the 100 small crises that seemed to arise constantly. Katherine discovered that ranch life meant being adaptable, ready to handle whatever came next. She learned to help with the animals when needed, earning Warren's approval with her easy way with horses. She learned which supplies were essential and which could wait, how to stretch food stores between trips to town. She learned the rhythms of this place, the way the wind changed before a storm, the way the cattle bunched together when predators were near. And slowly, without meaning to, she began to learn Warren himself. She learned that he rose before everyone else, checking the animals before the sun was up. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that emerged occasionally, usually directed at Charlie's enthusiastic storytelling. She learned that he was scrupulously fair with his men, firm but never harsh. She learned that he worried more than he let on, often standing on the porch late at night, staring out at his land with the weight of responsibility clear on his face. She also learned that he was lonely. It showed in small ways, in the way he lingered sometimes after the evening meal, clearly wanting conversation but unsure how to initiate it. In the way he watched her work with an expression that was part admiration, part longing for something he could not name. Katherine found herself watching him too, noticing things she should not notice. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted something heavy. The rare smile that transformed his serious face. The gentleness in his hands that contrasted so sharply with his rough exterior. It was dangerous, these feelings that were growing in her chest. Warren was her employer, and she had lied to him by omission about who she was. But every day made it harder to remember why she should keep her distance. 3 weeks after Katherine arrived at the ranch, a storm rolled in from the mountains, fierce and sudden. Lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the house. Warren and the hands had been working on the far pasture and came racing back, soaked and breathless. "We need to get the horses into the barn," Warren shouted over the wind. "Katherine, help Charlie with the doors. Tom, Jake, start rounding them up." Katherine ran into the storm without hesitation, her skirts immediately heavy with water. She and Charlie wrestled the barn doors open and held them against the wind while the men drove the panicked horses inside. Lightning struck somewhere close, the crack so loud Katherine felt it in her chest, and one of the horses reared, breaking free. Warren was after it immediately, moving with quick confidence despite the mud and chaos. He caught the horse's halter and began leading it back, speaking low and calm. Katherine watched him, impressed despite the situation, and then she saw it, the tree branch falling from above, knocked loose by the wind and heading straight for him. "Warren!" She was running before she finished the shout, tackling him out of the way. They went down hard in the mud, the branch crashing down exactly where he had been standing. For a moment they just lay there, Katherine half on top of Warren, both breathing hard. Then he was moving, pulling them both up, checking her over with frantic hands. "Are you hurt?" "Katherine, are you hurt?" "I am fine." "Are you?" He stared at her, rain streaming down his face, and something shifted in his expression. "You could have been killed. So could you?" The horse, forgotten in the chaos, had found its own way into the barn. Charlie and the others had everything under control, but Warren and Katherine stood in the rain, looking at each other, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Why did you do that?" Warren asked quietly. "Because I could not let you get hurt." The words were simple, honest, and they hung between them like a confession. Warren reached up, brushing wet hair from her face, his hand lingering against her cheek. "Katherine." Whatever he was going to say was lost as another crack of thunder made them both jump. The spell broke, and they hurried into the barn. The hands were settling the horses, talking in low voices to calm them. Katherine stood shivering, suddenly aware of how cold she was, and Warren draped his coat over her shoulders despite being just as wet. "Everyone all right?" He called out and received affirmatives from all three men. "Good. Storm should blow through in an hour or so. We will ride it out here." They settled in to wait, and Katherine found herself sitting next to Warren on a hay bale, his coat still around her shoulders and his presence solid and warm beside her. The storm raged outside, but inside the barn there was a strange sense of peace. "That was a brave thing you did," Warren said quietly, just for her. "Stupid, but brave." "I am not sure there is much difference sometimes." He laughed, a real laugh that Katherine had never heard from him before, and the sound made something flutter in her chest. "You might be right about that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain on the roof. Then Warren spoke again, his voice hesitant. "I have been meaning to thank you for everything you have done here. The ranch, it feels different now. Better." "You mean cleaner and with edible food," Katherine teased gently. "I mean it feels like a home." He was looking at her now, his expression open in a way she had never seen. "I did not realize how much I missed that until you got here." Katherine's heart was beating too fast. "Warren, I need to tell you something about why I came to Opal." He shook his head. "You do not owe me your story, Katherine. I meant what I said that first day. I am not going to ask questions. I know, but I want to tell you." She took a breath, gathering courage. 4 months ago, I answered an advertisement. A rancher in Wyoming looking for a wife." She felt Warren go still beside her. "Katherine, let me finish, please." She twisted her hands together, staring at them instead of him. "I was desperate to leave Missouri, to get away from my stepbrother who had been making my life unbearable since my mother died. The advertisement seemed like an answer to prayer. We exchanged letters, made arrangements. I was supposed to meet him in Kansas City." The words came faster now, tumbling over each other. "But the man who met me was not the rancher. He was someone else, someone connected to my stepbrother. They planned to force me into a marriage to get control of the small inheritance my mother left me. They kept me tied up for 3 days while they made arrangements. Warren muttered something under his breath that might have been a curse. I got away, Katherine continued. I do not even know how, really. They got careless, left me alone for a few minutes, and I managed to get free and run. I made it to the real stage office and just kept coming west because I had nowhere else to go. When I got to Opal, I planned to find work and just disappear. I never expected. She finally looked up at him. I never expected the rancher from the advertisement to be you. Warren was staring at her, his expression unreadable. You are her, the mail-order bride who never showed up. Yes. And those rope burns. From being tied to a chair. Yes. He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the barn. Katherine watched him, her heart sinking. She had known this could go badly, but the reality of his silence was worse than she had imagined. Finally, he turned back to her. Why did you not tell me this when you figured out who I was? Because I was afraid. I thought you would turn me away, that you would think I was lying or trying to manipulate you, and because I did not know if I could trust you. I did not know if I could trust anyone. But you trust me now. It was not quite a question, but Katherine answered anyway. Yes, I trust you. Warren came back, sitting down beside her again. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was measured. I wish you had told me sooner, not because it changes anything, but because you have been carrying this alone and you did not need to. Katherine felt tears building. I am sorry. I should have been honest from the start. You were honest about everything that mattered. You worked hard, you did not complain, and you just saved my life at risk to your own. The rest, the letters and the plans that did not happen, those were circumstances beyond your control. He paused. I am glad you told me, and I am glad you came here, even if it was not the way either of us planned. You are not angry. I am furious, but not at you, at the men who hurt you, at your stepbrother, at every circumstance that brought you to this point. But angry at you? No, Katherine. Never at you. The tears spilled over then, and Katherine could not stop them. Warren pulled her against him, letting her cry into his shirt, his arms strong and steady around her. The storm outside was fading, but Katherine barely noticed. She was too focused on the feeling of safety, of being held by someone who actually cared. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed by the breakdown, Warren handed her a handkerchief and waited patiently while she composed herself. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now, nothing changes. You have a place here for as long as you want it. You are safe, Katherine. I promise you that. He hesitated, then continued. But I need to know something. Those letters we exchanged, the things we wrote about building a life together, did you mean any of it? Katherine thought about the letters, about the hopes she had allowed herself to have. I meant all of it. I wanted a partnership, someone to build something with. I wanted a fresh start and a chance to prove myself. I wanted all the things you wrote about. What about now? After everything that has happened, is that still what you want? She looked at him, at this strong, gentle man who had bandaged her wounds and asked no questions, who had given her work and safety and now forgiveness. I do not know how to answer that. What we have now, this arrangement, it works. I do not want to complicate it. Warren nodded slowly. All right. But Katherine, I need you to know something. Those letters, they were not just words to me. I was serious about finding a partner, about building a life with someone. When you did not show up, I told myself it was not meant to be. But now you are here, and you are everything I hoped for and more. So when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would like to revisit those plans we made. Katherine's breath caught. Warren. No pressure, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. Take all the time you need to heal, to trust. I will wait. The storm had passed, leaving the evening fresh and clean. The men began moving toward the house, ready for dry clothes and hot food. Warren stood, offering Katherine his hand, and she took it, letting him pull her up. They walked back together through the mud, and Katherine felt something shift inside her. The weight of her secret was gone, and in its place was possibility. Warren had not rejected her. He had not judged her. Instead, he had offered her time and patience and the promise of something more. It was more than she had dared to hope for. The weeks that followed brought a new ease to Katherine's life on the ranch. With the truth finally revealed, she felt lighter, more herself. Warren treated her the same as always, respectful and kind. But there was a new awareness between them, a tension that was not quite uncomfortable but definitely present. Katherine caught herself watching him more often, noticing the way he moved, the sound of his laugh when Charlie said something particularly ridiculous. She noticed how he always made sure she had help with heavy tasks, how he asked her opinion on ranch matters, treating her as a true partner even though she was technically just an employee. And Warren, for his part, seemed equally aware of her. She would look up from her work to find his eyes on her, the expression in them warm and patient. He started lingering after meals, helping with dishes despite her protests, just to have a few extra minutes of conversation. The ranch hands noticed, of course. Charlie teased them both mercilessly, until Tom told him to mind his own business. Jake just watched with his careful eyes, but Katherine thought she saw approval there. Summer deepened, bringing long hot days and the constant work of maintaining the ranch. They made their bi-weekly trip to town, and Katherine was surprised by how many people greeted Warren warmly, how respected he clearly was in the community. Mrs. Patterson pulled her aside at the general store. "You look well," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "Ranch life must agree with you." "It does," Katherine admitted, "more than I ever expected." "And how is Mr. Fletcher treating you?" "With complete respect and kindness." Mrs. Patterson's smile widened. "Oh, honey, I was not worried about that. I was wondering if he had gotten around to courting you yet." Katherine felt heat rise to her face. "Mrs. Patterson, do not look so shocked. Everyone in town can see how that man looks at you, and how you look at him, for that matter. Life is short, especially out here. Do not waste time dancing around what you both want." The words stayed with Katherine on the ride back to the ranch. Was it so obvious? Did everyone really see what she had barely admitted to herself? She was falling in love with Warren Fletcher, with his quiet strength and gentle hands, with the life he had built and the man he was. The question was, what was she going to do about it? The answer came on a Sunday evening in late July. Katherine had the day off, but with nowhere particular to go, she had spent the afternoon reading on the porch. Warren had been working despite the day of rest, a broken fence that could not wait. He returned as the sun was setting, tired and dusty. Katherine brought him water and he drank it gratefully, then settled into the chair beside hers. "You should have taken the day off," she said. "I will rest when the work is done." He paused. "Would you like to take a walk? There is something I want to show you." "Curious," Katherine agreed. Warren led her away from the house, across a field and up a small rise. From the top, the entire valley spread out before them, bathed in golden evening light. The ranch buildings looked small and perfect in the distance, and the mountains were touched with pink and orange from the setting sun. "This is where I stood the day I decided to buy this land," Warren said quietly. "I had been working on someone else's ranch, saving every penny. When this property came available, I rode out here to look at it. I stood right here and I could see it, the whole future. The house, the barn, the cattle, I could see all of it." Katherine stood beside him, imagining a younger Warren with nothing but dreams and determination. "I have been happy here," he continued. "Proud of what I have built, But lately, I have been standing here and seeing something different. Something more. What do you see? He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Catherine's heart race. I see you beside me. I see a real home, not just a ranch. I see the future I thought I was getting when I placed that advertisement, the partnership I wanted. Catherine's throat was tight. Warren, I know I said I would wait. I know you need time. But Catherine, I also know that life can change in an instant. I almost learned that the hard way when that branch fell. And I realized I do not want to waste any more time being cautious when I could be honest instead. He took her hands, carefully, mindfully of the scars on her wrists. I love you. I think I started falling for you the first day, when you were sick with fever but still stubborn enough to argue with me. And every day since has just made me more certain. I love your strength, your courage, the way you faced your past and did not let it defeat you. I love how hard you work, how you have made this place a real home. I love you, Katherine Lambert, and I do not want to just be your employer. I want to be your partner in every sense of the word. Katherine felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from overwhelming emotion finally released. I love you too. I tried not to, told myself it was too complicated, too soon. But I cannot help it, Warren. You have been nothing but good to me from the first moment. You saw me at my worst and you helped without judgment. You gave me safety when I was terrified and purpose when I was lost. How could I not love you? Warren pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against him, and Katherine felt like she had finally come home. Not to the ranch, but to this man, to this moment, to this feeling of absolute rightness. When he finally pulled back, it was just enough to tilt her face up to his. Katherine Lambert, will you marry me? Not because of an advertisement or an arrangement, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you. Yes, Katherine whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. The kiss was sweet and gentle and perfect, the culmination of all the weeks of tension and yearning. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and smiling. Should we tell the others? Katherine asked. Warren laughed. I think Charlie will burst if we do not tell him soon. He has been placing bets with Tom about when I would finally work up the courage to propose. They walked back to the ranch hand in hand as the stars began to appear overhead. The hands were on the porch, and their faces lit up when they saw Warren and Katherine approaching together. Finally. Charlie crowed. Tom, you owe me $5. You were betting on us, Katherine asked, but she was laughing. Miss Lambert, everyone within 50 miles has been waiting for the boss to stop being stubborn and court you proper, Jake said with one of his rare smiles. Congratulations to you both. They celebrated with coffee, and the cake Katherine had baked that morning, and the evening was filled with laughter and teasing and genuine happiness. Katherine looked around the table at these men who had become her family, at Warren beside her with his hand covering hers, and felt a peace she had never known. Later, alone on the porch, Warren pulled her close again. How soon do you want to get married? Is next week too soon? Katherine asked, only half joking. Not for me, but maybe we should give people a little more notice than that. How about a month? End of August. Perfect. They stood together, watching the night, and Katherine thought about how far she had come. From a woman fleeing for her life with rope burns on her wrists to someone with a future full of love and possibility. It had not been an easy journey, but standing here in Warren's arms, she would not change a single step. The next month passed in a blur of preparation. They kept the wedding plans simple. A ceremony in Opal with Mrs. Patterson and a few other town friends attending, followed by a celebration at the ranch. Katherine wore a simple cream-colored dress that the seamstress helped her make, and Warren wore his best suit, looking handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal clothing. Mrs. Patterson cried through the entire ceremony, dabbing at her eyes with her handkerchief. Charlie stood as Warren's best man, grinning like he had personally arranged the whole thing. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Warren kissed Katherine with such tenderness that several people in attendance got misty-eyed. The celebration at the ranch went late into the evening, with neighbors and friends bringing food and music. Warren and Katherine danced together under the stars, and Katherine could not remember ever being this happy. When the guests finally left and the ranch settled into quiet, Warren carried Katherine over the threshold of their home, their room now, and set her down gently. "Are you happy?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Katherine answered honestly. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, and Katherine let herself fall into it completely. This man, this life, this love, it was everything she had dreamed of in those letters she had written months ago. But the reality was so much better than any fantasy. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Warren taking his time, showing Katherine with his body what he had already told her with words. She belonged here with him, and he cherished her completely. When they finally fell asleep tangled together, Katherine felt a contentment that went bone deep. The seasons turned, bringing fall and then winter. Katherine learned to navigate the harsh Wyoming weather, the way the wind cut through everything and snow piled up in drifts. Warren taught her to shoot, insisting she needed to be able to protect herself if he was ever away. She proved to be a natural, much to his pride. They worked together to build their life, making decisions jointly, facing challenges as a team. When a particularly bad storm killed several cattle, they mourned together and then figured out how to recover. When Katherine successfully negotiated a better price for their beef in town, Warren praised her business sense and asked her opinion more often. The ranch hands adapted to having a woman as the boss's wife, treating Katherine with respect that deepened into genuine affection. Charlie remained his cheerful self. Jake slowly opened up more, and Tom became a steadfast supporter who defended Katherine fiercely when anyone in town dared suggest she did not belong on a ranch. Spring came again, bringing new calves and the hard work of expanding the herd. Katherine woke one morning feeling queasy and realized with a mixture of excitement and terror that she might be pregnant. She waited another week to be sure, then told Warren over breakfast. He dropped his fork, staring at her with an expression of such joy that Katherine felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you certain as I can be without seeing a doctor, but yes, I think so." Warren was around the table in an instant, pulling her up into a gentle embrace. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Katherine asked, needing to hear it. "Happy does not begin to cover it." He pulled back to look at her. "You have given me everything, Katherine. You have made my life complete in ways I never imagined possible, and now this. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine dealt with constant nausea for the first few months, and Warren hovered anxiously, trying to help. She finally had to order him to stop treating her like glass and let her continue her work. They compromised, with Katherine doing lighter tasks and Warren hiring a woman from town to come help a few days a week. As Katherine's belly grew, so did Warren's protectiveness. He worried constantly, checking on her throughout the day, making sure she was not overdoing it. Katherine found it both endearing and occasionally frustrating, but she understood. This baby represented their future, the family they were building together. The baby came in January, during a snowstorm that made getting to town impossible. Katherine labored through the night with Warren beside her, terrified but determined. The woman from town who had been helping, Mrs. Chen, had thankfully stayed at the ranch because of the weather and served as midwife. Dawn was breaking when their son finally arrived, screaming lustily. Warren cut the cord with shaking hands, and when Mrs. Chen placed the baby in Catherine's arms, he looked at his wife and child with such overwhelming love that Catherine started crying. "He is perfect," Warren whispered, tracing one finger down their son's tiny cheek. "You are perfect." They named him William, after Warren's father, and he became the center of their world. Warren was a devoted father, getting up for night feedings even though Catherine insisted he needed his sleep for ranch work. He would pace the floors with William, singing off key lullabies and telling the baby all about the ranch he would inherit someday. Catherine had never seen anything more beautiful than Warren with their son. This strong, capable man reduced to tenderness by a tiny infant. And when William would grab Warren's finger in his tiny fist, Catherine's heart would swell with love for both of them. The ranch hands were equally smitten. Charlie declared himself Uncle Charlie and took his role seriously, whittling toys and making faces to get the baby to smile. Tom and Jake were more reserved but no less devoted, each one treating William with gentle care. Life fell into a new rhythm, more chaotic but richer for it. Catherine learned to manage her work around the baby's needs, and Warren adjusted his schedule to spend more time at the house. They were exhausted most days, but it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from building something meaningful. William grew from infant to toddler, and the ranch flourished. Warren and Catherine expanded their operation, adding more land and more cattle. Catherine proved to have a gift for the business side of ranching, managing their finances with skill that impressed even the bank manager in town. On their third anniversary, Warren arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch William and took Catherine back to the spot where he had proposed. The view was just as beautiful as Catherine remembered, the valley spread out before them. "I stood here 5 years ago and saw a future," Warren said, pulling Catherine close. "But my imagination was not nearly good enough. What we have built together, it is so much better than anything I dreamed." Catherine leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the strength of his arms around her. "I was running when I came here. I was scared and hurt and desperate, but you saved me, Warren. You gave me everything." "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "You gave me a home, a family, a reason beyond just work. You gave me love when I had almost given up on finding it. We are partners, Catherine, in every way that matters." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I am pregnant again." Warren's face transformed with joy, and he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. "Again? Are you serious?" "Very serious. You are going to be a father twice over." He set her down carefully, his hands cradling her face. "I love you so much. Have I told you that lately, this morning at breakfast, and last night before bed, and yesterday afternoon when I brought you lunch in the field? Well, I am saying it again. I love you, Katherine Fletcher. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Their second child, a daughter they named Emma, arrived that fall. She had Catherine's dark hair and Warren's green eyes, and she ruled the household from day one. William was enchanted with his baby sister, constantly wanting to help with her care. The years continued to pass, each one building on the last. The ranch grew into one of the most successful in the territory. Catherine became known not just as Warren's wife, but as a rancher in her own right, respected for her business acumen and fair dealing. Warren never made a major decision without consulting her, and their partnership became the stuff of local legend. They had 2 more children, another son they named Samuel, and a daughter named Grace. The house rang with laughter and occasional tears, with the chaos and joy of a large family. The ranch hands grew older with them, Charlie eventually marrying a girl from town, and building a house on the property. Tom and Jake becoming beloved uncles to the Fletcher children. On their 10th anniversary, Katherine stood on the porch watching Warren teach William, now 9, how to rope a calf. Emma was beside her, chattering about a bird's nest she had found, while Samuel and Grace played in the yard. Mrs. Chen had become a permanent fixture, helping with the children and the house, more family than employee. Katherine looked down at her wrists, at the scars that had faded but never quite disappeared. She did not try to hide them anymore. They were part of her story, part of the journey that had brought her to this moment. Those rope burns had led her to Warren, to this life, to this family. Warren looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. That smile still had the power to make her heart skip, even after all these years. He handed the rope to William and walked over to the porch, pulling Katherine into his arms. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Everything. How different my life could have been. How grateful I am that I ended up here with you." "We were lucky to find each other," Warren agreed. "Even if it was not quite the way either of us planned." Katherine laughed. "No, it was definitely not the way we planned, but I would not change anything. Neither would I." He held her closer, and they stood together watching their children play in the yard of the ranch they had built together. That night, after the children were in bed, and the house was finally quiet, Katherine and Warren sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the night was filled with the sounds of their land. "You remember the first time I bandaged your wrists?" Warren asked quietly. "Of course. You were so gentle, so careful not to hurt me, and you did not ask questions, even though you must have been curious. I knew you had a story. I figured you would tell me when you were ready." Katherine took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You gave me so much that day, Warren. You gave me healing, yes, but more than that, you gave me dignity. You saw me at my lowest and you treated me like I mattered, like I was worth helping. That was the moment I started to hope again." Warren brought her hand to his lips, kissing the faint scars on her wrist. "You always mattered, Katherine, from the very first moment. And every day since has just confirmed what I knew then. You are strong, courageous, and extraordinary. I am honored to be your husband. And I am honored to be your wife." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of partnership and love. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, the ranch they had built together stretched into the darkness. And above, the stars bore witness to a love story that had started with rope burns and bandages, and had grown into something beautiful and enduring. Katherine thought about the advertisement that had brought her west, about the plans that had gone so wrong and then so right. She thought about the woman she had been, desperate and scared, and the woman she had become, strong and loved and complete. "Warren," she said softly. "Yes. Thank you for not asking questions that first day. Thank you for giving me time to heal in every way." He pulled her close, and Katherine settled against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you for trusting me with your story, for trusting me with your life, for choosing to stay here with me and build this beautiful life together." The wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. Katherine closed her eyes, surrounded by Warren's strength and love, and knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she belonged. Years turned to decades. William grew up to take over much of the ranch operations, marrying a smart young woman from Cheyenne who reminded everyone of Katherine. Emma became a teacher, opening a school in Opal and teaching the children of the valley. Samuel decided to study veterinary medicine, eventually returning to the area to care for livestock. Grace, their youngest, proved to have a gift with horses and established a breeding program that became known throughout Wyoming. Warren and Katherine grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces marked by time and weather and laughter. But their love never wavered. If anything, it deepened with the years, becoming richer and more profound. On their 30th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and love, 3 generations of Fletchers together in the home that Warren and Katherine had built. That evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, Warren and Katherine walked hand in hand to their special spot on the rise overlooking the valley. They moved slower now, but they still made the journey, just as they had done every year on their anniversary. 30 years, Katherine said, leaning against Warren's shoulder. Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like just yesterday I was bandaging your wrists in that boarding house room. Other times it feels like we have always been together, like there was never a time when you were not part of my life. Katherine looked out over the valley, at the ranch that had grown far beyond anything they had imagined. We built something good here, Warren. Something that will last long after we are gone. We built it together, he corrected, as he always did. Everything good in my life I owe to you. That is not true. You would have been successful no matter what, maybe, but I would not have been happy. Success without someone to share it with is just work. You made it all mean something. They stood in silence for a while, comfortable in each other's presence. Finally, Katherine spoke again. I think about that scared woman who stepped off the stage in Opal sometimes. The one with rope burns on her wrists and terror in her heart. I barely recognize her now. She was always strong. She just needed someone to remind her of that. And you did. You saw value in me when I saw only damage. You helped me heal inside and out. And then you loved me, completely and without reservation. How did I get so lucky? Warren turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. We both got lucky. I was a lonely rancher with a successful operation but no one to share it with. You needed safety and a fresh start. We found each other at exactly the right moment in exactly the right way. That is not luck, Katherine. That is fate. I love you, Warren Fletcher. I have loved you for 30 years, and I will love you for 30 more if we are blessed with that much time. And I love you, Katherine Fletcher. You are my heart, my home, my everything. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a kiss that carried 30 years of shared history and love. When they finally pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. They walked back to the house slowly, stopping occasionally to look at the stars or simply to stand together in the Wyoming night. Inside, their family slept, the generations they had created together. The ranch spread out around them, testament to years of hard work and partnership. Katherine thought one last time about those rope burns, about the pain and fear that had brought her to this place. She thought about Warren's gentle hands bandaging her wrists, about his quiet promise that she was safe. She thought about all the days and years that had followed, each one building on the last, creating a life beyond her wildest dreams. The scars on her wrists had faded almost completely now, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. But Katherine would never forget what they represented, not just pain and trauma, but also the beginning of healing. The moment when a quiet cowboy had looked at her with understanding eyes and chosen to help rather than judge. The moment when her real life had begun. As they reached the porch, Warren held the door open for her, just as he had done thousands of times before. Katherine stepped inside, into the warmth and safety of the home they had built together, and knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice all those years ago. She had come to Wyoming as a mail-order bride who never made it to her destination. She had arrived broken and scared, with rope burns on her wrists and no idea what the future held. But she had found a man who saw past the damage to the strength beneath. A man who bandaged her wounds and asked no questions, who gave her time to heal and space to become who she was meant to be, and together, they had built a love story that would echo through generations, a testament to the healing power of patience, kindness, and unconditional love. The rope burns had healed, leaving only faint scars, but the love they sparked had grown into something vast and enduring, something that would outlast them both. As Katherine settled into bed beside Warren that night, his arm around her and his breath steady and warm, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, for the man who had saved her in every way that mattered, for the life they had created from nothing but hope and hard work and love. The Wyoming wind sang outside their window, the same wind that had greeted her 30 years ago when she stepped off that stage. But she was not that frightened woman anymore. She was Katherine Fletcher, rancher's wife, mother, grandmother, partner, and beloved. She was home exactly where she belonged with the man who had bandaged her wounds and healed her heart. And as she drifted off to sleep, safe in Warren's arms, Katherine smiled. The rope burns had brought her to him, but love had made her stay. And it was love that would carry them through whatever years remained, together until the very end. Their story had started with pain, but had become something beautiful. And that, Katherine thought as sleep claimed her, was the greatest gift of all. Not the absence of scars, but the love that made them bearable. Not the forgetting of the past, but the building of a future so bright it outshone every dark moment that had come before. She had been a mail-order bride with rope burns on her wrists. He had been a cowboy who bandaged them and asked no questions. And together, they had created a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings.